This is a map of Chicago's rapid transit system, commonly known as the L. Among American cities, it's often praised as one of the most reliable and far-reaching metro networks in the country. The system stretches across nearly the entire city and carries around 420,000 riders every single day, totaling well over 120 million trips each year. But the trains alone don't explain why Chicago works so well. Because when you look beyond the transit map, the entire city feels unusually deliberate, almost as if it were designed with a clear plan in mind. And that's because it was. Chicago is built on one of the most orderly street grids in the United States, with numbered streets and a rational address system that makes getting around far easier than in most major American cities. At the same time, its downtown forms one of the densest concentrations of skyscrapers in the world. Yet instead of being isolated by highways or industrial land, it connects seamlessly to surrounding neighborhoods, transit lines, and the lakefront. What really sets Chicago apart, though, is how balanced it all feels. The city is dense, but not overwhelmingly so like New York. And it's urban, without collapsing into the kind of endless sprawl seen in cities like Atlanta or Dallas. As a result, Chicago consistently stands out as one of the best designed cities in America and one of the most livable. So how did Chicago turn out this way? And what decisions allowed it to avoid many of the urban planning mistakes that define so much of the United States? To answer that, we need to go back in time. A city growing faster than it could handle. For decades, Chicago was one of the fastest growing cities on the planet. In 1837, the population hovered around 4,000 people. By the early 1900s, it had exploded to roughly 1.7 million, making it the second largest city in the United States. Railroads, stockyards, shipping, and manufacturing turned Chicago into an economic engine almost overnight. But the city's growth far outpaced its infrastructure. Housing was overcrowded. Sanitation systems struggled to keep up. The Chicago River became dangerously polluted. Traffic congestion worsened. Rail lines and streets were laid out with little coordination. Chicago was booming, but it was also buckling under its own success. And at the time, this wasn't unusual. Most American cities were expanding rapidly with little long-term planning, but Chicago would become one of the first to seriously confront that problem. The plan that redefined the city. In 1909, architect and planner Daniel Burnham unveiled what became known as the Plan of Chicago. This wasn't a small proposal or a surface-level fix. It was one of the first comprehensive urban plans ever produced in the United States. Burnham's vision included broad organized boulevards, a connected network of parks and green corridors, a reorganized street and rail system, and a radical idea for the time, a lakefront that would remain permanently public. Burnham believed that cities should be designed deliberately, not allowed to grow randomly. The goal wasn't just beauty, it was efficiency, health, and livability. Not every part of the plan was implemented, but the ideas behind it reshaped Chicago permanently. And nowhere is that legacy more visible than along Lake Michigan, a waterfront that was never sold off. In most American cities, waterfront land eventually becomes private. Luxury condos, office towers, restricted access. Chicago took a different path. Nearly 25 miles of its lakefront were preserved as continuous public parkland, open to everyone, uninterrupted by private development. Beaches, trails, parks, museums, and open space stretch along the shoreline, fully integrated into the city itself. Today, Chicago has over 600 public parks, totaling more than 8,800 acres. That scale of public space is extremely rare in the United States, and it directly traces back to Burnham's plan. But parks alone don't make a city functional. The real backbone of Chicago's design lies in its streets. The grid that actually works. Chicago's street grid isn't just neat, it's mathematically precise. After the Great Fire of 1871 destroyed much of the city, planners leaned heavily into a fully ordered system of streets and addresses. At the center of the grid is the intersection of State Street and Madison Street. This point serves as the zero marker for the entire city. From there, streets extend north, south, east, and west. Addresses increase in a predictable pattern. Every 800 address numbers equals 1 mile. So if you're standing at 2400 West, you're exactly 3 miles west of State Street. If you're at 3200 North, you're 4 miles north of Madison. In a 2019 global analysis of 100 major cities, Chicago ranked as the closest real-world example of a perfect grid. For residents, this means the city is easy to navigate. For planners, it means infrastructure can be layered logically. And that's exactly what Chicago did next, building transit on top of the grid. Chicago's rapid transit system, the L, opened in 1892. Today, it's the third largest in the country, behind only New York and Washington, D.C. It consists of 8 lines, over 165 miles of track, and 145 stations. Despite the name, not all of it is elevated. But Chicago has retained more elevated track than most other American cities. While places like New York and Boston gradually moved large portions of their systems underground, Chicago kept many lines above street level. Part of the reason was practical. Chicago sits on soft, swampy soil, making subway construction significantly more expensive and technically difficult. But this decision also shaped the city's character. The trains became a visible, integrated part of everyday life, woven directly into neighborhoods instead of hidden beneath them. And at the center of this entire system is one of Chicago's most iconic features, the Loop, a simple idea with huge impact. Downtown Chicago is encircled by an elevated rail loop, literally called the Loop. Nearly every transit line feeds into it. This design does something incredibly important. It makes downtown easily accessible from almost anywhere. It simplifies transfers, and it turns the central business district into the core of the network. Even residents living miles away can usually reach downtown quickly and switch lines without complex routes. The Loop also enables direct rail access to both major airports, O'Hare via the Blue Line, Midway via the Orange Line. In most U.S. cities, airports are disconnected from daily transit. In Chicago, they're part of the same system. Density without overload. Chicago's livability also comes down to how it handles density. Areas near downtown, the near North Side, and the lakefront are among the densest neighborhoods in the country, with tens of thousands of residents per square mile. But that density doesn't suddenly disappear. As you move outward, it gradually tapers off. This creates a layered pattern of development. Mid-rise apartments, 2 flats and 3 flats, graystones, courtyard buildings, small multi-family homes. This type of housing is often referred to as the missing middle because it's been largely eliminated in many U.S. cities since the rise of post-war suburbia. In Chicago, it still exists at scale. That balance allows the city to support transit, walkability, and local businesses, while still offering quieter residential streets and personal space. Why Chicago remains relatively affordable. Despite its size and importance, Chicago's housing market remains more accessible than many peer cities. As of mid-2025, the median home price is around $360,000, less than half of New York's and below cities like Miami or Atlanta. There are many factors behind this: climate, property taxes, slower population growth. But urban form plays a role too. Chicago has a broad supply of housing across many types and price points. That diversity creates more entry points for buyers and renters and reduces extreme price pressure. In effect, the city's design helps stabilize its housing market, a city shaped by deliberate choices. Chicago has problems. Every large city does. But from an urban design perspective, it stands apart. Its streets are logical. Its transit is integrated. Its density is balanced. Its public spaces remain truly public. Chicago didn't end up this way by accident. It was shaped by decisions made over a century ago that prioritized function, access, and long-term thinking. And that's why, even today, Chicago remains one of the most thoughtfully designed and livable cities in the United States. Thanks for watching.